Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mike. I really appreciate you sitting down with me here this afternoon to discuss the OEM business and the opportunity before HP in that market space, but more specifically the pursuit of more support business within the OEM market segment. I first wanted to take a moment to kind of describe to you the opportunity from a market perspective that we have with the OEM market. So just to level set and make sure we're on the same page, as you know, an OEM is an original equipment manufacturer. And I really take OEMs and I split them into two business categories. The first one being white box OEM. And an example of that would be an arrangement such as Google has, where they have white box branded systems from Dell that they actually rebrand with Google covers, and they provide those servers at a fairly low cost to many corporations as a Google branded device. So that would be an example of a white box OEM. And then we have the OEMs that are more called embedded, which is where HP tends to play in the market space. An example of this would be a healthcare company that is taking an HP server and embedding it in an MRI machine and then selling that solution to their end user customer. So therefore embedding HP technology in their solution. This is a very booming market and one of the fastest growing markets today in IT. Most of the trade rags will tell you that the OEM market is a $16 billion TAM by the year 2016 in products and services. Today in the United States, from a hardware perspective, our OEM business represents about $500 million in hardware sales. As you know, my group was formed just 2 short years ago for the reason that we had a $500 million hardware business in the United States with relatively zero services attached. As you know, in our business, our support services is a fairly lucrative, high-margin business that really helps us offset some of the more aggressive deals we get involved in an otherwise fairly low-margin hardware business. So this was something that the corporation looked at as a huge opportunity for us to understand why we were not getting any support business and what we could do to make these customers aware of our support portfolio and at the same time recognize some revenue that has very high margins. So about 2 years ago, my group was formed. We are a team of 9 new business reps that sell technology support services across the TS portfolio. We do this through 2 key fundamentals. The first key fundamental is mandatory peering and partnering with our hardware companions that are also focused on the OEM market. It is very important that as we solution to these customers, at a minimum we go in with our hardware peers and we educate our customers on what's available to them from a services perspective. It's important that they understand the difference between warranty support and 24/7/4 support to proactive care to call to repair and what's available to them across the portfolio in addition to many consulting services. Mike, we found that just by showing up and making customers aware of our offerings, in the very first year we picked up relatively about $13 million in new sales to the OEM community in support services. So the first fundamental, once again, mandatory partnering and peering with our hardware peers. The second thing is we view ourselves as OEM specialists. So when we are in the room, there has to be no doubt that from a services perspective, we are the experts on understanding OEM business process, as well as how support services fits into and can accommodate those processes and the supportability of our OEM end user customers, which ultimately is the most important thing. I want to take a second to kind of outline a couple of differences between our OEM customer and what would be a typical data center customer with HP. In our typical data center scenario, we sell systems and support to customers to use internally within their own data centers. Hence, they install the systems there, or HP installs them, they are then integrated into their data center and supported at their data center. The difference with OEM is we're taking a product of ours, and that customer is going through an integration and testing period where they need to integrate that product into their solution, and then another step to sell that solution and ship it to their end user customer. And at that point of time, whatever was sold at attach needs to be transferred for entitlement purposes to the new end user. This is the sole purpose of my team in taking in responsible for this global business in a business that is very fast growing with HP. I wanted to highlight a few of our accomplishments over the past few years in today's current business model. And then in closing, we'll talk about meeting again perhaps in a couple weeks and optimizing the business model that we currently have. So when we started in 2012, we had less than 1% attach to our hardware sales. Today we are currently at 8%. Less than $2 million in TS in 2011 booked, over 300% growth last year to $40 million in FY13. We had no global services offering. In other words, a company here in the United States could not procure systems and services and deliver them globally. We now have cross-border services to do so. We had no specific OEM support. So in other words, our support could not tell the difference between an OEM call and a standard data center call. We now have the OEM technical support line that specializes in business function and process for OEM customers. And we had virtually no hardware peering or interaction. And we now have, almost 100% engagement with our hardware peers. So, Mike, it's obvious that we've taken advantage of the opportunity. What I would like to do is schedule 30 minutes, sometime maybe a week, 10 days from now. We digest the information that I've given you today about the current business model. And then let's get back together and talk about priorities for FY15, expanding the business to Mexico, Canada, Brazil, and making this a $100 million business for HP. Thanks for your time, Mike.